Hello everybody and welcome back to today's video. And today, as you can see, the inking and the sketching stage is complete, and we're here on Wednesday once again to continue on with the drawing of the week. This week, as this month is all about Christmas and Christmassy things, we did the Muppets Christmas Carol. So guys, if you didn't already check that out and you want to learn how to draw like this and all the things that I've drew and the story of the Christmas Carol, not the Muppets Christmas Carol, but the Christmas Carol nonetheless, in the background, which is normally, will be played here in a moment or two, but for something from the Muppets Christmas Carol for you guys to listen to. But like I said, guys, if you did miss any of these videos, don't forget you can check down below and go and check those out. Otherwise, my name's Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games, here every day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. That's where I'm going to be holding a few questions and things. If you want to leave me a question, guys, but if you want to watch, if you're watching here now live, you can leave a question or just have a chat with me in the live comment section down below, or it might be beside you, depending on what platform you're watching on. You could be on your phone, you could be on your TV, you could be on anything, guys. It totally completely up to you. And anyway, guys, yeah, let's get on with what we're doing. And we've already done, and we've already up into the story of the third part now, guys. Third and final part for the paper version. Like I said, I've already inked this, but I did sketch it all out first. So don't forget to go and check that out. But we've done the Ghost of Christmas Past, and we're now just getting towards the end of the Ghost of Christmas Present. But we still have to find out what is the future for Edmund Scrooge, that's not his name, for the Scrooge character. Okay, we've got Marley and Marley from the Muppets here, and we've got Kermit the Frog, Tiny Tim, and Miss Piggy from the actual film itself. And again, this is based on the Muppets Christmas Carol, and as always, I'm faffing around. I'm a bit late today, so I'm all rushy and wah, because I've been out and doing a bit of Christmas shopping and trying not to be a Grinch. That's the wrong thing. Try not to be a Scrooge. But if you do like the Grinch, again, guys, you can check that video. That is down below on the other videos. But today we're going to be colouring in with me either these felt tip Copic markers, brush pen Copic markers, or if I'll go and get them in a moment, my pencils as well. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be using this, because I kind of want to give this an old textury looking like kind of look, kind of like you would see in like a child's book or something like that. You don't normally see like very poppy colors when you get, but I might do what I normally do, is sort of put some things in my Copic markers and some in my brush pens, and then in like certain other bits in pencil. But without further ado, I'm going to get something playing in the background for the Ghost of Christmas Future, or possible future, or something like that. But anyway, yeah. And then we'll continue on with the story which we were listening to in the previous videos. Nothing's very loud. Oh, I know why nothing's loud. Give me a second. My computer, not my computer, my stereo decided it's not going to work because it's a pain in the arse. I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do that. And then I can turn the sound back on. Oy vey. Go on. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? Spirit, I fear you more than any spectre I have yet met.
Oh, this is too scary. I don't think I want to see anymore.
No, when you're right, you're right. You're on your own, folks. We'll meet you at the finale.
Yeah. Oh.
I am prepared to follow and to learn with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? Must there be a Christmas that brings this awful scene? How can we endure it?
It's all right, children.
Life is made up of meetings and partings. That is the way of it. I am sure we shall never forget Tiny Tim or this first parting that there was among us.
Must we return to this place? There's something else that I must know. Is that not true? Spirit, I know what I must ask. I fear to, but I must.
Man, even my phone's playing up today.
Who was the
I'm trying to
wretched
take a
man whose
screenshot while
death
I'm doing
brought
it.
so much glee and happiness to others?
I'm trying to take a picture for Instagram, guys. My phone and lots of things not working for me because I'm in a rush. I don't know how much colouring I'm going to get done today, guys. But if I don't get it all done, I will come back tomorrow and finish it in the
Are
morning.
these the shadows of things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may be only? These events can be changed. A life can be made right. Ebenezer Scrooge. Oh, please, Spirit, no. Hear me, I'm not the man I was. Why would you show me this if I was past all hope? I will honor Christmas and try to keep it all the year. I will live my life in the past, the present, and the future. I will not shut out the lessons the spirits have taught me.
There we go, guys. That's where we're up to on the story. I'm going to stop that video before I'm going to go back to history, and we'll carry on from where we were left off in the story of the Christmas Carol. Again, I can't find the whole story in like a snippet version on YouTube, but there is a audiobook which we have been listening to, and I do apologize I'm not drawing it or I'm not colouring. I'm faffing in the background because I've literally come in the house and gone, I haven't started anything yet, so I've gone, yep, that's it. This is get going and go live.
Their ears, he sometimes came out with his guess quite loud, and very often guessed quite right too. For the sharpest needle, best Whitechapel warranted not to cut in the eye was not sharper than Scrooge, blunt as he took it in his head to be. The ghost was greatly pleased to find him in this mood, and looked upon him with such favor that he begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until the guests departed. But this, the spirit said, could not be done. "Here is a new game," said Scrooge. "1/2 hour, spirit, only one." It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what. He only answering to their questions, yes or no, as the case was. The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, a rather disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made a show of, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every fresh question that was put to him, this nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp.
You're going to get a bit of skipping on this video, just purely because
cried out,
I'm using my tablet instead of my TV
I know what it
today.
is, Fred. I know what it is. What is it? Cried Fred. It's your Uncle Scrooge! Which it certainly was. Admiration was the universal
Okay, now I'm ready.
sentiment.
Let's move all
Though
shit.
some
It took me about
objected that
10
the
minutes,
reply
but so
"Is
you
it
got
a
to listen
bear?"
to something
ought to
anyway.
have been,
So we've got our
yes,
pens, pencils, and
inasmuch as an
Copic
answer in the negative was
markers.
sufficient to have diverted their
Here are
thoughts
these
from
pencils for
Mr.
now.
Scrooge,
Don't need those just yet.
supposing they had
But
ever
guys,
had any
if you want
tendency
to
that
say
way.
hello, all you got to do is
He
give
has
me a
given
hello
us
in the
plenty
live
of merriment,
section
I am
here,
sure,
and
said
you got
Fred,
to say hi
and it would be
in
ungrateful not
the
to drink his health. Here is a
chat.
glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge. Well, Uncle Scrooge, they cried. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, wherever he is, said Scrooge's nephew. He wouldn't
Okay,
take
so I'm
it
going to be
from
colouring
me,
this.
but may he have it nevertheless.
I think
Uncle
Kermit needs to have
Scrooge.
decent colour. Can't use a lot of these colours because they're
Scrooge
very,
had
very dark.
imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have pledged the unconscious company in return, and thanked them in an inaudible speech if the ghost had given him the time. But the
Okay, so I'm
whole
just
scene
going to
passed off in the breath of the
start
last
colouring, I
words
think.
spoken by his nephew, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. In an almshouse, hospital, and jail.
Double-sided pens. If you want a little review, I have done in the other videos, guys. So go and check those out if you want to know what these different pens are like. They're double-sided, and they're really good.
He left his blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts. It was a long night.
I can't remember what Kermit's face looks
Scrooge had his
like.
doubts of this, because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed the change, but never spoke of it until they left a children's 12th night party, when, looking at the spirit as they stood in an open place, he noticed that its hair was gray. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghost. "It ends tonight." "Tonight?" cried Scrooge. "Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near." The chimes were ringing the 11:15 at that moment. "Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask,"
We've got a
said
flesh colour in
Scrooge,
here.
looking intently at
I
the
don't normally have
spirit's
a flesh
robe.
colour. I've got orange.
"But I
That's
see
not good
something
enough.
strange, and not belonging to yourself.
This one's a
protruding
fleshy
from
colour.
your skirts.
Try using this one.
Is it a foot
My
or a
Copic marker
claw?
brush pen.
It
See
might
what it looks
be a
like
claw,
up here, actually.
for the flesh there is upon
See what I
it,
mean? It's very
was the
dark.
spirit's sorrowful reply.
I don't like using these ones because they're just so
Look here.
dark.
From the foldings of its
They
robe,
don't dry
it brought
colour.
two
They don't
children,
dry.
wretched, abject, frightful, hideous.
Oh my god, I haven't even
miserable.
took a picture of this. Give me a
They
second,
knelt
guys. Before I do
down at
any
his
more, I've
feet
got to take a
and
picture of this
clung
for...
upon the outside.
I've got to take a picture of this because if I don't, I can't digitize. Because what I normally do, guys, what I will be doing after this video is I'll be going to... I'll be going over to my Critter app and I'll be recording all of that, guys. I won't be live streaming that. So don't forget, if you're new, hit the subscribe button. And as you probably noticed yesterday, we had Nicole Jean, which she also has a reading of the Christmas Carol. Hopefully, I'll be able to put, and well, I say hopefully, I will be able to put her in the background so you guys can hear or watch her while I draw. Well, that's the plan. We're going to work together this week. Hopefully she'll join us today. Just let me take a quick picture of this so I can actually digitize it later. Try and get it all in frame. Try and cut that off today. Give me a second. Like I said, normally you'd have the sound on the TV coming through other things, but Today I have to use my tablet again, which is one of the worst things to use, to be honest with you. Let me check that picture. Make sure it's good. And then we'll carry on with the story. Yeah, that's good. Right. Back to where we were. Let's get that story back on. Go again. Sorry guys, that's me fapping. Oh, why would you do this to me? Nothing's working today. It's my own fault because I didn't get ready in time. Normally I start about 1 o'clock. It's now 2 o'clock, guys. Dishes and all sorts when I come in the house and then realised it was 2 o'clock. And play. Left off where we left off. If it will.
Garment.
There we go.
Oh man, look here. Look down here, exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them.
That's a really
and
crappy
pulled them
pencil. I
into
probably isn't a
shreds.
pen even. It probably doesn't have
Where
anything in it.
angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacingly. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade through all the mysteries of wonderful creation has monsters half so horrible and dread. Scrooge stared back, appalled. Having them shown to him in this way, he tried to say they were fine children, but the words choked themselves, rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. Spirit, are they yours? Scrooge could say no more. They are man's, said the spirit, looking down upon them.
I really
And
colour
they cling
reference.
to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, and all their degree. But most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it, cried the spirit.
They'll tip
stretching
out
out
anyway,
his
because end up
hand
dropping them on the
towards
floor.
city. Slander those who tell it ye, admit it for your own fascist purposes, and make it
This
worse,
pink look like-
and bide
Oh, it's
the
dry.
end.
Yikes!
Have they no refuge or resource? Cried Scrooge. Are
that's a
there
nice
no
colour.
prisons?
Jesus, Mum.
Said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. Are there no workhouses? The bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and, lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. End of Stave 3.
And of stage 3, so we're getting into the final edge of it now. Where I am
Stave
for
4
this.
Of A Christmas Carol by
Not
Charles
long
Dickens.
I wonder how long it's got left
This
on it actually.
Slapperbox
I wonder if I could
recording
beat
is
it.
in the public domain. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Stave 4, The Last of the Spirits. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. "You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, Spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. "Ghost of the future," he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge, "lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them and encompass them of its own act. But there they were, in the heart of it, on 'change, amongst the merchants, who hurried up and down and chinked the money in their pockets and conversed in groups and looked at their watches and trifled thoughtfully with their great gold seals and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin, "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked a third, taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a very large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," said the first, with a yawn. "What has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose that shook like the gills of a turkey-cock. "I haven't heard," said the man with the large chin, yawning again. "Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know." This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the same speaker. "For upon my life, I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer." "I don't mind going if the lunch is provided," observed the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose. "But I must be fed if I make one." Another laugh. "Well, I am the most disinterested among you, after all," said the first speaker. "For I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch. But I'll offer to go if anyone else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye." Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with other groups. Scrooge knew the men and looked towards the spirit for an explanation. The phantom glided on into a street. Its finger pointed at two persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie here. He knew these men also, perfectly. They were men of business, very wealthy, and of great importance. He had made a point always of standing well in their esteem, in a business point of view, that is, strictly in a business point of view. "How are you?" said one. "How are you?" returned the other. "Well," said the first. "Old Scratch got his own at last, eh?" "So I am told," returned the second. "Cold, isn't it? Seasonable for Christmas time? You're not a skater, I suppose?" No. Something else to think of. Good morning." Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversations apparently so trivial. But feeling assured that they must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. They could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and Disco's province was the future. Nor could he think of anyone immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But nothing doubting that, to whomever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement. He resolved to treasure up every word he heard and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared.
Christmas picky
For
eyes.
he had an expectation that the conduct of his future
Oh, crap.
self would give him the clue he missed, and would render the solution of these riddles easy. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the
Crap, what
porch.
colour are her eyes?
It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind.
Let me know, guys, in the comment section, because I can always do it back
And
again.
Thought
But
and
I can't
hoped
think of her
he saw his
hair-
newborn
eye colour.
resolutions carried out in
I don't want to
this.
get it wrong.
Quiet and dark, beside him stood the phantom with its outstretched hand. When he roused himself from his thoughtful quest, he fancied from the turn of the hand and its situation in reference to himself that the unseen eyes were looking at him keenly. It made him shudder and feel very cold. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half-naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets.
Can't believe that.
And the whole
This is
quarter reeked
not
with crime.
I do not like
filled
these pens, guys.
with
They
misery.
bleed like anything, as you can see
Far
there.
in this den of infamous
Ah,
resort,
my
there
God.
was a low-browed,
There's nothing I can do about black
below
either.
a penthouse roof, where
I'll have to
iron,
sort of
old
reshape it when
rags,
it's,
bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled
that.
up heaps of rusty
I can't believe that.
keys, nails, chains, hinges, files,
Kind of a reason I
scales,
don't want to
weights,
use these
and
pens, but
refuse iron of all kinds.
they are actually a colour
Secrets
base.
that
They're
few would
really
like
not
to
nice pens.
scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and sepulchres of bones. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in, by a charcoal stove made of old bricks, was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air without by a frosty curtaining of miscellaneous tatters hung upon a line, and smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black, who was no less startled by the sight of them than they had been upon the recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment, in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Let the charwoman alone to be the first," cried she who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance. If we haven't all three met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," said old Joe, removing his pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlor. You were made free of it long ago, you know, and the other two ain't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Ah, how it shrieks. There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe. And I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. We're all suitable to our calling. We're well matched. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor." The parlor was the space behind the screen rags. The old man raked the fire together with an old stair rod, and having trimmed his smoky lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, put it in his mouth again. While he did this, the woman who had already spoken threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees and looking with a bold defiance at the other two. "What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber?" said the woman. "Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did." "That's true, indeed," said the laundress. "No man more so." "Why, then, don't stand staring as if you was afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose?" "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber and the man together. "We should hope not." "Very well, then," cried the woman. "That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose?" "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber, laughing. "If he wanted to keep 'em after he was dead, a wicked old screw," pursued the woman, "why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had someone to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying grasping out his last there, alone by himself." "It's the truest word that ever was spoke," said Mrs. Dilber. "It's a judgment on him." "I wish it was a little heavier judgment," replied the woman, "and it should have been, you may depend upon it. If I could have laid my hands on anything else, open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them to see it. We know pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe." But the gallantry of her friends would not allow of this, and the man in faded black, mounting the breach first, produced his plunder. It was not extensive. A seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. They were severely examined and appraised by old Joe, who chalked the sums he was disposed to give for each upon the wall, and added them up into a total when he found there was nothing more to come. "That's your account," said Joe, "and I wouldn't give another sixpence if I was to be boiled for not doing it. Who's next?" Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall in the same manner. "I always give too much to ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I ruin myself," said old Joe. "That's your account. If you asked me for another penny and made it an open question, I'd repent for being so liberal and knock off half a crown." "And now undo my bundle, Joe," said the first woman. Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it, and having unfastened a great many knots, dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff. "What do you call this?" said Joe. "Bed curtains?" "Ah," returned the woman, laughing and leaning forward on her crossed arms. "Bed curtains. You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, within lying there?" said Joe. "Yes, I do," replied the woman. "Why not?" "You were born to make your fortune," said Joe.
Morning,
"And
Nicky.
you'll certainly do it. I
Coloring
certainly
in.
shan't hold my hand.
We're on the last
when
part
I
of the
can get
story now.
anything in it by
Goes to
reaching
Christmas
out. For the sake
future.
of such a man as he
What I'm
was,
colouring in
I
now.
promise you, Joe.
I'm not too
returned the
happy
woman
with the way
coolly.
that the colours
Don't
of this
drop
is
that
bleeded
oil
out.
upon the
See
blankets
there.
now.
That's about it at the
His
moment. I'm being really
blankets?
careful.
asked Joe. "Who else's, do you think?" replied the woman. "He
I
isn't
might go
likely
and get
to
myself
take
another
cold
set of
without 'em,
pens
I
because
dare
they just
say.
keep bleeding every time I
I
colour
hope
in
he
stuff.
didn't die of anything catching.
But
Hey,
sketch is still
said
good.
old Joe.
And I've
stopping
took a
in his
picture
work
ready
and
for the
looking up.
digitisation tomorrow.
"Don't you be afraid of that," returned the woman. "I ain't so
Not very
fond
talkative
of his
today, I'm
company
kind of
that I'd
rushing.
loiter about him for such things if he did. Ah, you may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me." "What do you call wasting it?" asked old Joe. "Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure," replied the woman with a laugh. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it isn't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. It can't look uglier than he did in that one. Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror, as they sat grouped about their spoil in the scanty light afforded by the old man's lamp. He viewed them with a detestation and disgust, which could hardly have been greater, though they had been obscene demons marketing the corpse itself. "Ha ha!" laughed the same woman, when old Joe, producing a flannel bag with money in it, told out their several gains upon the ground. "This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead." "Spirit," said Scrooge, shuddering
Thank
from
you.
head to toe.
I did Kermit's not the only one
I
I've done
see.
correctly.
The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this? He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced round it in obedience to a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft.
One thing I will say about this,
unwashed,
you can get like
unwept,
2 tones on it. You have to be really careful, because if you see there, the end of that pen,
Scrooge
it's meant to be a brush
glanced
pen,
towards
but
the
it's not.
Its
It's
steady hand was
because it even
pointed
says
to the
brush
head.
on it. As
The
you can see.
cover was so carelessly adjusted
can
that the
see.
slightest raising of it, the motion of a finger
But
upon
yeah, it's meant to be a brush pen, but it's not.
would disclose the face.
It's just a very long felt
He
tip.
thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it, but had no more power to withdraw the veil than to dismiss the spectre at his side. Oh, cold, cold, rigid, dreadful death, set up thine altar here, and dress it with such terrors as thou hast at thy command, for this is thy dominion. But of the loved, revered, and honored head, thou canst not turn one hair to thy dread purposes, or make one feature odious. It is not that the hand is heavy and will fall down when released. It is not that the heart and pulse are still, but that the hand was open, generous and true, the heart brave, warm and tender, and the pulse a man's. Strike, shadow, strike, and see his good deeds springing from the wound to sow the world with life immortal. No voice pronounced these words in Scrooge's ears, and yet he heard them when he looked upon the bed. He thought, if this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts? Avarice, hard-dealing, griping cares? They have brought him to a rich end, truly. He lay in the dark, empty house with not a man, a woman, or a child to say that he was kind to me in this or that, and for the memory of one kind word I will be kind to him. A cat was tearing at the door, and there was a sound of gnawing rats beneath the hearthstone. What they wanted in the room of death, and why they were so restless and disturbed, Scrooge did not dare think. "Spirit," he said, "this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson, trust me. Let us go." Still the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head. "I understand you, Spirit," Scrooge returned, "and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power." Again it seemed to look upon him. "If there is any person in this town who feels emotion caused by this man's death," said Scrooge, quite agonized, "show that person to me, Spirit, I beseech you." The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment, like a wing, and withdrawing it, revealed a room by daylight, where a mother and her children were. She was expecting someone, and with anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, started at every sound, looked out from the window, glanced at the clock, tried, but in vain, to work with her needle, and could hardly bear the voices of the children in their play. At length, The long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. There was a remarkable expression in it now, a kind of serious delight of which he felt ashamed and which he struggled to repress. He sat down to the dinner that had been hoarding for him by the fire, and when she asked him faintly what news, which was not until after a long silence, he appeared embarrassed how to answer. "Is it good news," she said, "or bad?" To help him. "Bad," he answered. "Are we quite ruined?" "No. There is hope yet, Caroline." "If he relents," she said, amazed, "there is. Nothing is past hope if such a miracle has happened." "He is past relenting," said her husband. "He is dead." She was a mild and patient creature, if her face spoke truth, but she was thankful in her soul to hear it, and she said so with clasped hands. She prayed forgiveness the next moment and was sorry, but the first was the emotion in her heart. "What the half-drunken woman whom I told you of last night said to me when I tried to see him and obtain a week's delay, and what I thought was a mere excuse to avoid me, turns out to have been quite true. He was not only very ill, but dying then. To whom will our debt be transferred?" "I don't know, but before that time we shall be ready with the money, and even though we were not, it would be a bad fortune indeed to find so merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline." Yes, soften it as they would, their hearts were lighter. The children's faces, hushed and clustered round to hear what they so little understood, were brighter, and it was a happier house for the man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show him, caused by the event,
Nikki,
was
can you let me know
pleasure.
what colour his shirt is, please?
Let me
On
see
the
some tenderness connected
dude
with a
on the
death,
thumbnail,
said
I can't
Scrooge.
remember.
"Oh, that dark chamber spirit which we left just now will be forever present to me." The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before them. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. "The color hurts my eyes," she said. "The color? Ah, poor Tiny Tim." "They're better now," said Cratchit's wife. "It makes them weep by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time." "Past it, rather," Peter answered, shutting up his book. "But I think he has walked a little slower than he used these last few evenings, Mother." They were very quiet again. At last she said, and in a steady, cheerful voice that only faltered once, "I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed." "And so have I," cried Peter, "often." "And so have I," exclaimed another. So had all. "But he was very light to carry," she resumed, intent upon her work. "And his father loved him so that it was no trouble, no trouble. And there is your father at the door." She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob in his comforter, he had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits got upon his knees and laid, each child with little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind, father, don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them, and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. "Sunday? You went today then, Robert, said his wife. Yes, dear, returned Bob. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green the place is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child, cried Bob. My little child.
I hate this
He broke down all at once.
I hate this bit
He
of
couldn't
story.
help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart perhaps than they were. He left the room and went upstairs into the room above, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There was a chair set close beside the child, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little and composed himself, he kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened, and went down again, quite happy. They drew about the fire and talked, the girls and mother working still. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day, had seen that he looked a little, just a little down, you know, said Bob. Inquired what had happened to distress him. On which, said Bob, for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman you ever heard, I told him, I am heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, he said, and heartily sorry for your good wife. By the by, how he ever knew that, I don't know. Knew what, my dear? Why, that you were a good wife, replied Bob. Everybody knows that, said Peter. Very well observed, my boy, cried Bob. I hope they do. Heartily sorry, he said, for your good wife. If I can be of any service to you in any way, he said, giving me his card, that's where I live. Pray come to me. Now it wasn't, cried Bob, for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way, that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim, and felt with us. I'm sure he's a good soul, said Mrs. Cratchit. You'd be surer of it, my dear, returned Bob, if you saw and spoke to him. I shouldn't be at all surprised, mark what I say, if he got Peter a better situation. Only hear that, Peter, said Mrs. Cratchit. And then, cried one of the girls, Peter will be keeping company with someone and setting up for himself. Get along with you, retorted Peter, grinning. It's just as likely as not, said Bob, one of these days. Though there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But however and whenever we part from one another, I am sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting that there was among us. Never, father, cried they all. And I know, said Bob, I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily among ourselves, and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it. No, never, father, they all cried again. I am very happy, said little Bob. I am very happy. Mrs. Cratchit kissed him, his daughters kissed him, the two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter and himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him, as before, though at a different time, he thought. Indeed, there seemed no order in these later visions, save that they were in the future, into the resorts of businessmen, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on, as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment. This court, said Scrooge, through which we hurry now, is where my place of occupation is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in days to come. The spirit stopped. The hand was pointed elsewhere. The house is yonder, Scrooge exclaimed. Why do you point away? The inexorable finger underwent no change. Scrooge hastened to the window of his office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed as before. He joined it once again, and wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused to look round before entering. A churchyard. Here then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite. A worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. He advanced towards it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw a new meaning in its solemn shape. "Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point," said Scrooge, "answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only?" Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. "Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead," said Scrooge. "But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me." The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. "Am I that man who lay upon the bed?" he cried upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. "No, spirit! Oh, no, no!" The finger still was there. "Spirit!" he cried, tight clutching at his robe. "Hear me! I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope?" For the first time the hand appeared to shake. "Good spirit," he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it, "your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that yet I may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life." The kind hand trembled. "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone." In his agony he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. End of Stave 4. Stave 5 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Stave 5, the end of it. Yes, and the bedpost was his own, and the bed was his own, the room was his own, best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. "I will live in the past, the present, and the future," Scrooge repeated as he scrambled out of bed. "The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees." He was so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face was wet with tears. "They are not torn down," cried Scrooge, folding one of his bed curtains in his arms. "They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here. I am here. The shadow of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will be." His hands were busy with his garments all the time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance. I don't know what to do, cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect loon of himself with his stockings. I am light as a feather. I am happy as an angel. I am merry as a schoolboy. I am giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to the world. Hello there. Whoop, hello. He had frisked into the sitting room and was now standing there, perfectly winded. There's the saucepan that the gruel was in, cried Scrooge, starting off again and going round the fireplace. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas Present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened. Ha ha ha! Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what day of the month it is, Scrooge says. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind, I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello! Whoop! Hello there! He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer. Ding, dong, bell. Bell, dong, ding. Hammer, clang, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious. Running to the window, he opened it and put his head out. No fog, no mist. Clear, bright, jovial, stirring cold. Cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. Eh? Returned the boy, with all his might of wonder. What's today, my fine fellow? Said Scrooge. Today? Replied the boy.
Yeah, it is.
Why,
It's a brilliant
it's
story.
Christmas Day.
Love it.
It's
I love this one.
Christmas Day, said Scrooge to himself. I haven't missed it.
You are
The
correct.
spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello, returned the boy. Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner? Scrooge inquired. I should hope I do, replied the lad. An intelligent boy, said Scrooge. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What, the one as big as me? Returned the boy. What a delightful boy, said Scrooge. It's a pleasure to talk with him. Yes, my buck. It's hanging there now, returned the boy. Is it? Said Scrooge. Go and buy it. Walker! Exclaimed the boy. No, no, said Scrooge. I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell him to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand at a trigger who could have got a shot off half so fast. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's, whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door.
Well, I don't like the colour of this
the
at all.
poulterer's man. As he stood there, waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye.
I can always change it when I
I
digitize.
shall love it as long as I live, cried Scrooge, patting it with his hand. I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has on its face. What a wonderful knocker. Here's the turkey. Hello. Whoop. How are you? Merry Christmas. It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them short off in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax. Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town, said Scrooge. You must have a cab. The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled until he cried. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much, and shaving requires attention, even when you don't dance while you're at it. But if he had cut the end of his nose off, he would have put a piece of sticking plaster over it and been
I don't
quite
technically I still
satisfied.
shave, I suppose. I just trim the
He
bits I
dressed
don't.
himself all in his best, and at last
grow
got
out.
out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth
Some
as he
plan
had
for my
seen them
beard.
with the ghost of Christmas
I don't know if
present.
it's going to work out,
And
though.
walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded
Coming short
everyone
of
with
time.
a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir, a Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest to his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before and said, "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe?" It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met, but he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it. "My dear sir," said Scrooge, quickening his pace, and taking the old gentleman by both his hands, "how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir." "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes," said Scrooge, "that is my name, and I fear it might not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness—" Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me!" cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken
I was going
away.
to do it all in black,
"My dear
the
Mr.
coat and
Scrooge,
trousers,
are
but I
you
think it would just be
serious?"
too much.
"If you please," said Scrooge, "not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?" "My dear sir," said the other, shaking hands with him, "I don't know what to say to such magnificent—" "Don't say anything, please," retorted Scrooge. "Come and see me. Will you come and see me?" "I will," cried the old gentleman, and it was clear he meant to do it. "Thank ye," said Scrooge. "I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you." He went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted children on the head and questioned beggars and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock. But he made a dash and did it. "Is your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "Nice girl, very." "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" said Scrooge. "He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank ye. He knows me," said Scrooge, with his hand already on the dining-room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear." He turned it gently and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array, for these young housekeepers are always nervous on such points, and like to see that everything is right. "Fred," said Scrooge. Dear heart alive, how his niece by marriage started! Scrooge had forgotten, for the moment, about her sitting in the corner with the footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. "Why, bless my soul!" cried Fred. "Who's that?" "It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office the next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1/4 past? No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open, that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean by coming in here at this time of day?" "I am very sorry, sir," said Bob. "I'm behind my time." "You are?" repeated Scrooge. "Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob, appearing from the tank. "It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir."
Okay, I'm done with the
Now,
Copic marker.
I'll tell
You know,
you
Copic
what,
markers,
my
the same
friend,
ink, it's just a
said
horrible
Scrooge.
bleeding mess.
I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again. "And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling to the people in the court for help and a straight waistcoat. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge, with an earnestness that could not be mistaken as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the altercation in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins, as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that truly be said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, every one.
God bless us, everyone,
End of
everybody.
A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
It is.
Recording by Kyle Munley.
There we go. There's the story of the Christmas Carol, guys. And what a story it is. And as I finish off the drawing that I've been doing all week, again, I apologize for some of this. I'll give you a zoom in because a lot of what you can see on camera is a lot more fuzzier than actually is. Turn the light on there. Turn the other light on. You can see that a little bit more colourful now. You can see it, guys. Like I said, there are bits here, like it is a little bit bleeded, but there's not much I can really do about that. It is these pens here. I would still recommend getting them. Just be very careful where you colour and what colours you put together. But I have absolutely loved doing this one, like I do normally, and I'm just going to put a few extra little bits here and there to finish this one off. and say a very Merry Christmas to everybody. If you do celebrate Christmas, or Merry Hanukkah, or I don't know how you guys say that, but yeah, Merry whatever you guys celebrate at this time of year. Hopefully you have enjoyed the story in the background, and keep tuned, because me and Nikki will be doing a collaboration in the next, tomorrow. I'm going to be continuing on, like I always do, guys, taking this over to my digital format. That's why I took a picture of it at the beginning of the video. And what I'll do, guys, is I will have me coloring me coloring it in a digital format, so where I can instead of it being, you wouldn't have any bleeding, you wouldn't have any issues with it whatsoever. And it just, if I make a mistake, I can delete it, whereas this I can't. Like I said, guys, hopefully you have enjoyed this. Hopefully Nikki's still here. I'm not sure if she still is. I think she's gone off. She is recording stuff for me at the moment. She's done a couple already, so guys, you can go and check them out. Click her icon on in the chat bar there, and you'll be able to go straight over to her channel. It is Nicole Jean, as says there. But you can just hang on and definitely hit that subscribe button, because I will be back tomorrow, like I said, to digitize. I'm just putting the last few bits and bobs here where it needs it, but this picture is pretty much finished now. So definitely let me know what you think of it down below, guys. Have you enjoyed it? Have you had a go yourself? What's your favorite Christmas story? Because I'm going to need a vote, like I have on Instagram, to let me know what to do next, because I'm not sure. So if you're watching this now, guys, definitely let me know. Or if you're watching this back, let me know what to draw next week, because it has to be, like I say, it could be Hanukkah, but I don't know anything about that, because I was brought up a Christian. Not that I am a Christian, but I was brought up on Christmas, and that's kind of my go-to at this time of year. I could have a go at doing something that's out of something I know, if you guys would like me to, or I'll just keep off as much way as possible, and just do like another, because I'm already doing kind of Christmassy things, another Christmas story. I'm thinking maybe the Nightmare Before Christmas or the Night Before Christmas. I am not sure. I would like to do the Nightmare Before Christmas, but I will give you guys another vote over on Instagram, or you can leave your suggestions in the comment section today, if you're watching now, or if you're watching back. Like I said, whoops. I'm just putting a few more last few details with pencil, because I want the characters to pop out, but I'll have the background as a background. But it does definitely, as you can see, it does need a background. My phone going off. It does need a background, like I said, guys. So I'm just going to quickly put a few bits here and there where it needs it. I think we have slates. Back in the old days, we still have slates on our roofs now. I even have slates on my roof. But again, guys, definitely let me know what you would like to see next week. And over the Christmas period, I do not know whether I should take a time off or carry on going. I don't think I will be drawing as much, but you never know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. Like I said, my son's in the other videos. My son's not going to be here for Christmas. He's actually going to see his mum because he lives with me, not with his mum. And he will obviously going to go spend some time with his nan and that. It's a bit horrible of me to say no, to say he can't go and see his mum and that over the Christmas period because, it's that time of year. Everybody sees everybody, except me, apparently. So I will endeavour to carry on doing things just to keep myself occupied, because depression is one of those things that struck me and will strike me if I don't keep something in my heart, and I don't want to become a Scrooge or a Grinch. In fact, I don't think I'll ever really become one of those. I'm definitely not a Scrooge, because every year I'll buy something for my son, and it's I never disappoint him. That is one of my greatest fears, is to disappoint my son. I don't like disappointing anybody, let alone my son, because he's my greatest friend is my son. We live together as man and boy, and I aims to keep it at that. Dog, stop licking. It's a horrible noise. Put him in as a spectre, I think, actually, thinking about it. Him in as well as a spectre. So he's not quite there, but he is there. You see what I mean? Won't cover the faces up, but we'll just suggest it, that they're kind of see-through, kind of like this one here. She's kind of see-through too. We'll ever so slightly gesture it. We won't completely colour it, but gesture it indeed. Right, slate roofs. That's kind of grey, so I'll just use my pencil for that. But I'm pretty much done now. Just the last few bits and bobs here. But like I say, me and Nikki will be doing a collaboration. She's been doing, and I've checked out already, portions of it. I haven't watched it all because I kind of want to not review it, but be like a little surprise for myself. So if you're watching back, Nikki, I won't watch all of your stuff. I will watch it as I'm doing, because I think that'll be a better way to sort of watch yours like you do mine. Softens the picture up a little bit if you add a little bit there, here and there. Right, okay, so it's time to give you a zoom in, because this here is complete. This is Muppet's Christmas Carol. One of those drawings that I've really enjoyed doing. Again, I am really sorry that happened. That is going to bug me, and that is going to bug me to the end of time that has happened, and I will definitely keep in mind that that happened. Let's give you a zoom in. Oh, not face. Horrible. Ugh. But there's Kermit the Frog, and Tiny Tim, Bob Cratchit, characters, and his wife. And we'll have Scrooge, the main picture and the person. I'm not going to colour Scrooge's facing because I kind of want to leave him white and ghostly. Same as I haven't really completed doing the Marley brothers, but there is only obviously one Marley in the story. but in the Muppets. You got Marley and Marley, because they're the two hecklers from the guys that sit in the balconies and heckle every time the Muppets are on. And you got the spectre of the ghost of Christmas Past. Again, I didn't colorize in because I didn't think I need to. I think she's all right as she is. And then we got a ghost of Christmas Present, which again I like that one. And ghost of Possible Future, and the gravestone there. So hopefully you have enjoyed this one, guys. And that's like sticking out like a sore thumb every time I see it. Yeah, hopefully you have enjoyed the story. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys, so you can come back tomorrow and see the digital version that I'll do. The digital version will be a hell of a lot more detailed. The colors will be a lot more vibrant, and there won't be any bleeding or anything like that. So hopefully you have enjoyed it. I keep saying that, but hopefully you have. And because I've loved drawing this one. There's so much I've got in there, and I was really surprised I've actually got it colored. But we did. So hey, thank you very much for watching, guys. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you have liked it, and I will see you tomorrow for some more. Don't forget, I will upload those videos, guys. They won't be live, so check you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. Here every day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys. Check down in the videos down below if you want to see the sketching and the inking video, and also the Grinch from last week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Bye.